Palate to Palate with Robert St. John and Wyatt Waters is made possible by a generous contribution from the Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation. Additional funding is provided by this and other public television stations and from viewers like you. Thank you.
So we headed to Oxford, Mississippi, hung out with James Beard Award-winning chef John Currents.
Cool.
We got kind of under pressure in his kitchen. We got a pressure cooker. I thought the pressure cooker was gone. And we did absolutely one of the best pork roasts I've ever eaten in my life. We hung out on the front porch with him.
And I got to do some painting square books. A few years ago, it was voted as the #1 independent bookseller in America. And Oxford that's one of the things it's really known for. It's known for its writers.
Yeah. And we just hung out on the square. We did Oxford. So you and I have spent a lot of time in Oxford with books and on book tours and going to square books, but you've spent a whole lot of time in Oxford.
I did a book on Oxford. I learned a lot of how things work.
When my friends went up as freshmen, and I was a freshman at another school in the vicinity, you know, the square was a little different place. And what it has become is much different than what it was.
Very much. The square didn't really begin with a square. Some people tell me there was the gin, there was the hoka, there was the warehouse, and those were off the square. But it gradually started seeping in, and next thing you knew, there were all these cool little shop mixes.
The true game changer was Square Books.
To me, Square Books is like the epicenter.
So Square Books opened on the square. It became one of the best independent bookstores in the country. 2 doors down, City Grocery opened.
You know, City Grocery, it's where you go to eat, hang out. Yeah.
Once City Grocery opened on the square, it was a game changer. The thing about City Grocery, you know, John Currents grew up in New Orleans. And so, you know, what's one of the top 2 or 3 food cities in America. So that's his background, that's his pedigree. And you grow up around that, and then he went off to college and worked under Bill Neal in the Carolinas. And Bill Neal was really the first person that started this new wave of Southern cooking. And then John, I think he came back to New Orleans, worked a little, and then went up to Oxford and opened up City Grocery, and it changed the game, really, in Mississippi. It was one of the first places of the new era. So John was nice enough on a Sunday morning to, you know, go out and buy a pork roast, cook lunch for us, but as most Southerners are wont to do, we just got in some rocking chairs on the front porch and had a little bit of conversation.
Southern culture, on the porch.
So it's sitting here on your front porch in Oxford. It strikes me there are certain people and times that mark the era of this. Obviously, William Faulkner, James Meredith. I think then you go into the Archie Manning area when you're 69. Willie Morris, Barry Hannah coming to town in 80, and Howarth is doing Square Books. And then I think it's you in 92. So
I don't know if I want to accept responsibility for being mentioned, you know.
You just got it. Whether you accept it or not, I'm just telling you, that's the way I see Oxford. And I think the whole Renaissance started when you did City Grocery. You changed the culinary landscape. And I know there are other restaurants and there are other people, but it's got to start somewhere. In my opinion, it started with you.
I just won't go away, you know. I'm like just a really bad cold.
And Oxford is still a college town. Even though Oxford is its own entity and there's this culture that is separate from the university.
It seems like it's also got a lot of retired people who want to be in the presence of a university that has lectures.
Yes, and college towns in general, you know, attract you know, that segment of the population, and for those reasons, because there's so much to do.
This might be a good time. Bring Mamie back. Mamie, can you come give Daddy one more kiss? We're gonna make you a TV star.
Did you say of course?
She did such a good job of that. I think, you know, best kiss is like an award, isn't it now?
Oh, that's good stuff right there.
Cool house.
Oh, yeah.
John had a really cool house, cool wife, but I'm gonna tell you, one of the cutest little girls. Outside of our two daughters, I'd say John's daughters is right up there with
He's a good dad.
win the cutest award.
Good sugar.
I've known John for close to 30 years now, and it's been great watching his career just skyrocket, really. From a guy who moved up and opened a small place on the square to a guy that hangs out with Elvis Costello and travels the world. I guess he's got 5 or 6 restaurants now. He's still opening them up, and Big Bad Breakfast is I think in Birmingham and now on the Panhandle, and it's been great watching his career take off. Really has.
I really haven't had any Big Bad Breakfast yet, but I'm going to.
You have not been to Big Bad Breakfast.
I don't know why. I haven't. I just thought of it right now.
Well,
but I'm going to.
we got to work on that.
So you grew up eating New Orleans, North Carolina for college, back to New Orleans and then to Oxford. So how does that all come together to define John Currance's style of cuisine?
I was cooking in the south of France. I was over there with my parents for my dad's 60th birthday, and was cooking with this French chef for about 2 weeks. The last day that we were there, the chef comes running up to me, and he has this pot of okra, between his thumb and his forefinger. He goes, "Tell me about this. I see all the time, but I do not know how to cook." And I was like, "Oh, that's okra, brother." And I was like, I'm fixing to put on a little cooking demonstration for you. And he comes back and he has this tiny little bag with like 4 okra pots in it. And I was like, "No, man, it's not hot. Go get all of the okra." And that's what we ended up having, like a 5-course okra dinner that night. So I'm watching him taste through these things, and I can see the wheels in his head turning, like that he has this new weapon for his arsenal, and how's he gonna fold it into his repertoire? It's like I could just see this going on. And it's in that moment that I realized, like, all these things that I'm craving, that I want to go home and cook immediately, that is all coming out of my garden, like, this is where my passion lies. And this is stuff that I just completely pushed to the side. But these are the things that, that I love the most. And so, like, I could not get home quick enough from that trip. And that's really when our, food began to take shape. And it was, I realized that, like, the things that, we did the best were the things that I thought about the least. Like when I just made a pot of seafood gumbo, like I just didn't think about it. You just sort of threw it together, but I was thinking about doing something else that I was, overthinking. But the gumbo would be spectacular.
Know exactly what you're talking about.
Right?
Yep.
The simplicity of how he prepares his food is really not that unlike the simplicity in painting. When you're young, you kind of want to do all these varied and sophisticated things, and then you get older and you grow in what you do. You figure out that the simple things are actually the most difficult and the best. They're the most challenging things to do. He does that really well.
I agree with that, and I think the older you become, you're looking for things that are just real and true, and those aren't always the shiny things.
And our food began to sort of take shape as the food that sort of spoke to my life, and that was the French Creole of New Orleans, and and then this this very, very sort of Sunday supper food that that I ate with with my grandparents in the summers, or when they came to town and my grandmother cooked, and so that's when I really realized that City Grocery was the food at City Grocery. I was telling the story of my life through it.
Big Bad Breakfast, really taking my favorite meal of the day, which is breakfast, kind of to another level, but it's everything we're familiar with.
Big Bad Breakfast is really where we made a very hard right turn into exploring that specifically. It's looking at the very fundamental pieces of what it is that you're focusing on in the food, and finding every way that you can to celebrate like that one central thing, and that's got to be a lot like your subject.
It's one theme I seem to do in painting is look for something that I have great familiarity with, and try to discover something new in that, and that's translates to me what good Southern food, especially today, is. You got some traditional but you try to do something to it that makes people recognize what it is instead of just go right past it because they've had it so many times.
So I thought, visiting with John on the front porch, I thought we were going to go right into cook, but the light was right for you, and I know when the light is right, you got to get there and get the painting done, and of course you chose Square Books. I think more than any other place you've painted, other than the Jackson metro area, I would think Oxford is where you've done most of your work outside of the metro area. Would you agree with that?
Of course I do. I got to know it through other books I'd done before, but then I just kind of fell in love with painting that area and the dynamic of all the little shops and the history, the architecture, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. The food.
Yeah. How many times have you painted Square Books?
Oh golly, I'm sure it's been probably over 10. I bet it's been over 10. Different angles, inside, outside, rainy, sunny, night, day, everything, you know.
This one was my favorite.
Well, it was the last one I did, and I'm always trying to get better with this, but it's the center of all this stuff that we call Oxford. To me it is. I mean, there are a lot of things people say about what makes a community what it is, but you know, writing is certainly one of the things in Oxford.
It's a big thing.
The pressure's crazy.
It's like working in a pressure cooker, man. It just keeps
It is. The pressure cooking. Again, back to the theme of the day. Okay, I'm getting pretty doggone close where I can say this is going to be where we are.
Painting on the square is really exciting. You meet a lot of people you might not meet anywhere else. I met Morgan Freeman there. I met Archie Manning there. I met Wilco there one time too. So I mean, you know, there are all kind of opportunities, pedestrian opportunities you don't get painting just any regular thing in Mississippi.
You know, one of the cool things about our professions, which are a little different but kind of the same, is the whole feedback aspect of things, and it's a little with my cooking, but mostly with writing.
You want to know your audience's response.
But
you want to connect.
People come up and they know about my family and they know details that I had forgotten, and I know with art, that feedback component is
you got that expression, but you always want that communication. You want to get across to them.
Yeah. The other cool thing that Square Books did is they started Thacker Mountain Radio.
That is
which you've been on Thacker Mountain. I've been on Thacker Mountain. I was on funny thing because you know the town is so associated with Faulkner and Roanoke. I was on Thacker Mountain one time. Marty Stewart was a musical guest, and we were sitting in the audience. I was reading something from one of my books, and we were sitting before the show started. And he said, "Did I ever tell you my Merle Haggard story?" And I said, "No." And he said, "I brought Merle up and showed him Oxford, and we drove around. I took him to Roanoke, and we toured Roanoke, and I think we were on the square later that night." And he said, Merle looked over to me. He says, "Marty," he said, "I like this town, Oxford." He said, I said, "You know what I really like? I like that old Billy Faulkner's house. You think he'd sell it to me?" Billy Faulkner.
The ghost of Faulkner is everywhere in Oxford. And you walk across the square, and you go in front of the City Hall, and there's the Bill Beckwith sculpture. It's a beautiful sculpture of Mr. Faulkner sitting there with his pipe, you know, and it's
on the
bench.
bench.
It's a pretty cool thing, yeah. It makes you feel the presence.
If I'm not mistaken, I think the largest selling book in the history of Square Books is not a Grisham book, but Oxford Sketchbook by Wyatt Waters.
Richard told me that one time, Howarth, but it's a great town, and Oxford Sketchbook was completed about a third of the way through before it became Oxford Sketchbook. I was up there, and I would just, like I do everything else, when I'm somewhere, I go paint. That's just part of what I do. And I had gathered up enough of these things, and I thought, well, you know, I think I could do a book on Oxford. And so at that point, I began working on it. I met most of the people who added their writing to the book by painting on the square, like I do everything else. I meet people on location.
And so Archie Manning, Barry Hanna, all these people submitted what Oxford meant to them in that book. It was a cool idea.
The second book I did, Painting Home, before it was about Barry Hanna. I met Barry
How did you meet Barry?
Well, you know, I lived in Clinton, and I lived about 4 houses down from his mother and father, who were living at the time. And one day, someone knocks on the door and he said, "I hear there's a painter who lives here." And of course, you know, we knew Barry Hanna. He went to Mississippi College, where I went to school. And so when he was leaving, he said, "If you ever need a foreword or some writing or something like that," he knew I'd done some books. He said, "Give me a call." And so when I was doing Painting Home, I just got on the phone and called and said, "Sure." And that's how we got the foreword.
You know, that's a very Mississippi story. You know, Square Books has been very good to us in our career, and I love the fact that, well, if you're going to paint something, you're going to paint what you know. And
That's
you
where
know
I'm the
Square
most
Books.
Experience. That's where I've got the most experience.
So I gave John carte blanche. Do whatever you want. I didn't dictate. You cook what you want to do. Why now? Be there. You know, do what you want. And he said he'd been kind of messing with pressure cookers lately. Not the new kind of pressure cooker, the kind like our grandmothers cooked with, the little valve and the whole thing, which are very dangerous. If you are going to cook with a pressure cooker at home, read the directions. So we got to get that disclaimer out. But
Don't try this at home.
he ran to the grocery store, grabbed a pork roast. There was about 6 ingredients in that thing.
The pressuring process actually like forces flavor into whatever it is that you're cooking. So you get a much more intensely flavored red bean. When
You know, the thing about pressure cookers is the pressure. I mean, you know, and you're not cooking out all of the juices and the natural seasonings and all of the good vitamins and nutrients out of things, whether you're cooking red beans,
Yeah.
which taste red beanier,
Yes.
or you're cooking pork roast or whatever you're doing.
It just makes it more what it is. Like ever so
really
much
does.
more so. Homer
That
Price.
pressure holds in the juices, and that's what you want. When you lose juices, you lose flavor, and it dries out, and it's just not as good.
And it's harder, I understand, to burn something with a pressure cooker. It keeps the moisture in. It's not that you can't burn, it's just harder to.
Except beer dogs.
Beer dogs. No. I'm going to see. That's what I'm going to cook with my pressure cooker. I got one.
there's a lot of apprehension around them because of what folks perceive as you basically putting a small bomb on your on your stovetop, and it really does make kind of a nasty racket when it gets going. And so I think they make people kind of nervous. And the odd thing that I explain to folks when we're cooking in them is like, it's not the noise that you should be frightened of. It's if it stops making noise. Like that's where you really got the problem.
But he was right about that. It is a small bomb. You got to be careful with that thing.
It's the bomb.
I came up here on a weekend because it's exactly as far away as I could get from New Orleans on a tank of gas, and be back in time to work on Monday. This was just sort of a lark to come get away, relax, and my friend that I'd come to visit, he and I had worked at Coach Rose together. He was in the front of the house, and I was in the kitchen, and we started talking, just sort of about ideas that we'd had for things that we wanted to do in New Orleans, and sort of dreaming about, what if we went back and did this or that. And the smartest thing that he ever said to me was, well, why the hell do we want to go back to New Orleans when we could set up shop here? I mean, there's nothing going on here. Yeah, okay, sure, Oxford, Mississippi, that sounds great. It's, it comes to mind for me right after New York and San Francisco when I think about food. And I went home, back to New Orleans, and over the course of the next couple of weeks, that seed really germinated, and I came back up here sort of as quickly as I could. And we started poking around. I mean, we bought some paint, bought our liquor license, and a liquor inventory and some beer, and we opened the bar and just ran the bar for about 2 weeks until we could make enough money to buy a food inventory and buy some paint to paint the dining room. So we fixed the floor, bought a stove, and opened the downstairs.
That's the beautiful thing about the restaurant business. So, I mean, it's truly the American dream. I mean, people can start from scratch.
The thing that I remember from that cooking segment is that once he opened the top safely, and I took a bite, and then you took a bite.
Came in like hyenas.
I mean, it was, you just couldn't stop, man. It was like, I'm gonna take it. I knew the camera was on, and I knew it was filming, but I was like, Oh, this is so good.
This is good.
That's rare for me. And I've eaten a lot of food in my life. I've eaten a lot of food. I can tell you absolutely the best pork roast I ever ate was in John Currance's kitchen in Oxford, Mississippi. You don't really want your mom, Lucy, to know how good that was, do you? It was really good.
Cooked that way.
It was so simple. The potato application he did, they were sliced thin. It was a very classic French treatment there, and it's good stuff.
Whether it is a iconic or quintessential Mississippi dish or not, it is now, because we're in Oxford, Mississippi. We had it. We created this great memory. You and me in Oxford, hanging out with John in his kitchen, eating that killer pork.
We'll always have the pork. We'll always have the pork.
You know, years ago I did a poster. The first thing I did for University Press was a literary map, and it was a real big honor to do that. And so many of those writers were from Oxford, had some connection to Oxford. There's, of course, Faulkner is the main guy there, and but Willie Morris.
Who wrote the foreword to one of your books?
He did do that, and he gave me the manuscript to get proofed by my dad, and my dad read it for accuracy and gave it back to me. He said, "You may want to tell Mr. Morris to include something about your mother's side of the family." Those kind of little personal things. And Miss Welty, you know, all these writers from Mississippi, they all have to pay some homage to Oxford because it's such a center for writing. Mississippi's known for a lot of things. I mean, we're known for Miss America's, athletes, but really, per capita, we have more writers of stature than just about any state. And that's a pretty cool thing.
You know, Shelby Foote told an interesting story about when he was young, I guess in late teens, and drove over from the Delta and went up to Roanoke and just knocked on the door, knocked on Faulkner's door, introduced himself, and they kind of started talking about, you know, Shelby Foote was this, writer, hopeful writer one day, and they actually went out and as they were walking through the cemetery, he said, Mr. Faulkner kind of looked at him, he said, you know, Shelby, there's a story behind every one of these graves.
Wow.
Yeah.
In Mississippi, we're just people. That's the cool thing about Mississippi. Everybody knows everybody.
Everybody has a story. My absolute favorite Faulkner story is, you know, he was a screenwriter in LA and in Hollywood for a while and wrote a few screenplays. And he was at a big Hollywood function, and Clark Gable came up and they were engaged in a conversation, and they were talking about writers, and Faulkner's telling Clark Gable his favorite writers and reeling them off, included himself as one of the favorite writers. And Clark Gable says, "Oh, Mr. Faulkner, do you write?" To which he replied, "Yes, and what do you do?"
They were asking Mr. Faulkner, how can you drink so much and not eat? You know, how do you say, well, there's a lot of nourishment in an acre of corn. Corn again.
You know, it's something I talk about all the time, and you and I have talked about it a lot. I think the best art has a sense of place. And that's Oxford to me. And it's, you know, it is the square, but really when you think about it, it's a courthouse with a street that just drives around it. So, I mean, you know, instead of a courthouse with a street that drives in front of it. But it's more than that. It's what is made up around that becomes the square, and it's people's love and appreciation for it. People that went to school there years ago, and it's their memories of the square and what happened there, and it's that sense of place. Whether you're talking about, you know, Monet's Garden, or you're talking about Gershwin's New York, or you're talking about Whitewater's Mississippi.
Well, I love painting there because in a lot of ways it's Mississippi condensed into a walking area. I had my first, second, and third drink at the gin.
Is that true?
And maybe the fourth and fifth too. I don't remember. And then I went across to the Hoka back in the day. You know, that was where a lot of it began. But all the little shops there, until it closed, I had every breakfast that I ever ate in Oxford at Smitty's. That was not because it was like, you know, a 5-star or anything. It's just that you got all the regulars there, all the waitresses kind of having their little, you know, little arguments, and the regulars sitting in the corner, and I would have a great cup of coffee and a beignet while I was there.
You know, in a sense, that's Mississippi.
Oh yeah.
It's small towns, it's the people, it's the little cafes, it's the bookstores, it's the courthouses, it's the place.
Stay tuned next week when we blow up someone else's house.
That's right.
Many of the paintings seen on today's program are featured in the A Mississippi Palate Cookbook. This beautiful volume also includes Mississippi Heritage Recipes, A Mississippi Palate Cookbook. Palate to Palate with Robert St. John and Wyatt Waters is made possible by a generous contribution from the Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation. Additional funding is provided by this and other public television stations and from viewers like you. Thank you